Spectacle has been a compelling feature of contemporary cinema since its early beginnings in the 19th century. The first ever movie to be witnessed by a group audience was Arrival of a Train by the Lumiere brothers in 1896. This didn't just become the first movie ever made, but became the first spectacle film. It is said that the audience that attended the movie premiere watched in awe as the train came towards the camera. Some were even scared, thinking the train was going to come out of the screen and enter the theatre itself. This first ever account of a cinematic experience was an audience's reaction to witnessing the spectacle that was moving images. A reaction of wonder and awe that is transferred into today's movie theatres. Since Arrival of a Train, spectacle in movies has continued to evolve, ever changing with the continuous advancements in technology that push its potential and contribution to what we identify the cinematic experience to be today. Spectacle has always been utilised for one main purpose, to evoke awe and wonder from its spectacular attraction. This is, as Arroyo states, a seduction by spectacle, which provides sensuous and visceral pleasures, which is now considered a characteristic of many contemporary Hollywood films. When considering spectacle as a means of seduction, we can view its further intentions as a universal selling point for contemporary cinema, offering visual pleasure over narrative development to attract its audiences. Spectacular imagery of various kinds sells, a notion made by Jeff King that modern cinema has shifted its approach when appealing to the masses. The production's approach to bringing in its audiences are by scale and budget, two key components that provide an attractive spectacle. However, this antithetical viewpoint on the subject is that narrative and spectacle are separate from their intentions when compared together. But this isn't always the case. In recent years, modern cinema has been known to utilise the two methods to create what is known as spectacle storytelling. A combination of two elements where both methods, narrative and spectacle, entwine within the unfolding movie structure. In this essay, we are going to uncover what spectacle storytelling is and how it benefits the cinematic experience. But first, we must know what to look out for when understanding spectacle in film. Many aspects can visually aid or enhance the spectacle in cinema. Repeat cuts and slow motion can often be added to a scene to enhance the impact of a large-scale spectacle, such as the destruction of a building or to capture an expansive location. This can often be accompanied by a variety of extremely long establishing shots, working together to encapsulate what Jeff King describes as a contemplative spectacle, as the viewer is invited in through these types of shots to appreciate and admire the magnitude of the spectacle being demonstrated. Exaggerated rapid editing and camera movement are also contributing factors to the spectacle in contemporary cinema. Being used in conjunction with images of grand visual scale, their purpose is to heighten the impact of a spectacular moment, becoming what is known as impact aesthetic. Cross-cutting or parallel editing is a prominent characteristic of a spectacle scene. Its purpose is to show two separate shots that are acting out simultaneously, often one being the action and the other being the reaction. This technique is often regarded as a Spielberg look, for its purpose of visually cueing the audience to prepare for something spectacle to follow in the next shot, such as in Jurassic Park when the dinosaurs are revealed to us for the first time. This brings us to CGI, the most recognisable characteristic of movie spectacle. CGI encapsulates the imagination of the director and stretches the film's narrative capabilities, becoming a prominent feature of blockbuster films. The popular Marvel Cinematic Universe has been in cinematic demand in recent years, as its superhero stories can be best made using CGI. As King suggests, blockbusters such as those of the MCU continue to base much of their appeal on the promise of providing a variety of spectacle that befits the nature of the specifically cinematic context of the exhibition. They intend to build upon the narrative by embodying the fantasy world of which our heroes operate. This can often come at a cost of narrative development, however, since the spectacular exhibition becomes a primary focus for the audience.
You missed the first time. Then you got them both the second time.
When I speak of spectacle storytelling, I discuss the unification of narrative and spectacle. When accomplished, spectacle storytelling incorporates all the necessary elements to achieve great spectacle and then uses it to drive its primary narrative. This unification is not uncommon. As King states, elements of spectacle and narrative have coexisted across the history of Hollywood cinema in varying combinations. For example, the movie Interstellar has a primary narrative centered around the black hole known as Gargantua. Our primary protagonist, Cooper, is tasked with a mission to explore the potential habitability of the planets orbiting the black hole, in hopes that they can find a perfect candidate for colonisation by the humans, who back on Earth are in a race against time as natural disaster and famine has swept the world. Interstellar is evidence of spectacle components unifying with its narrative composition. This is what Sheldon Hall and Steve Neal refer to as agents of spectacular narrative action. The power of spectacle action working together with its narrative ties in nicely with Yvonne Tasker's viewpoint on the subject. As with most movie narratives, we want to find out, to follow the narrative through to its conclusion and the revelation of knowledge that accompanies this. This is true to the nature in which narrative is commonly told in cinema, but when spectacular agents are deliberately tied in with narrative composition, we find ourselves pausing for a moment, displacing our thought process from the narrative, to stop and stare to linger over details. This isn't necessarily a distraction, as much as it is a way to visually tell the story in a consolidated manner. The spectacle action demonstrated complements the narrative arrangement, becoming a form of spectacle storytelling. Christopher Nolan's approach to spectacle storytelling is what distinguishes his movies from other run-of-the-mill blockbusters. There is an understanding of the audience's expectation in his approach. As in Furby enjoys the cinema of Christopher Nolan imagining the impossible, they describe that, for Nolan, the virtue of film is its ability to give audiences an immersive experience. Nolan considers the incorporation of everyday life aspects like time and emotion within his narrative. It is then represented further through spectacle to achieve this form of movie immersion. Time is a signature of Nolan movies. In Interstellar, the crew is in a literal race against time as humanity's demise is edging close. Nolan found a way to explore the depiction of time by working with Hans Zimmer in composing a score. The score is used in many scenes to coincide with its visual counterparts, displaying the character's race against time. Time becomes an obstacle within the narrative, but is made spectacle through its orchestral embodiment and relationship with the primary spectacle Gargantua. Human emotion is distilled within all of Nolan's narratives. In Inception, Cobb's initial intention of exploring the multi-layered dream states is to plant an idea into the mind of a CEO. This, however, is affected by Cobb's tragic backstory, where prior to the events of the film, his wife Mal committed suicide. The grief for his wife and his love for his children is what drives the narrative and spectacle development. Isolation and grief are represented through the spectacular imagery seen throughout the film. Scenes of vast expansive landscapes in which the hero operates identifies the underlying human emotion of loneliness and Cobb's desire to have his wife back by his side. In the Batman trilogy, realism is a concept Nolan wanted to address throughout the entirety of his movies. From this portrayal, he gains the audience's attention as the fictional narrative draws in with its inspirations of real life.
And so for me it was much more about creating a recognizably real scenario that the extraordinary figure of Batman could exist in.
Batman's realism doesn't only transfer to its narrative, but to its spectacle-based sequences also. As Aiden and Zone argue, for the viewer to successfully engage in the transference of reality, to leave the real world and enter if only partially the imaginary cinematic place, the spectacle on screen must resemble at least vaguely the spectacle of everyday life. Nolan adapts his spectacle sequences to the realistic standards set by his films, by staying true to his intentions of creating a cinematic immersion. In The Dark Knight, Nolan presents us with an interactable setting, seen here during the truck flipping scene in which Batman uses his surroundings to lead the Joker into a trap. There are no special effects used in this sequence, as the scene was achieved entirely through practical effects, a method that Nolan advocates when delivering realistic and immersive spectacle.
There's nothing more dispiriting than when you turn up to work and there's just a green screen with a couple of actors in front of it. It's really, the magic's not there. So trying to do these things for real, trying to use real locations. I've always preferred real locations to sets for the same reason. There's a feeling of reality, there's a feeling of being somewhere that matters.
King's statement is true, that spectacular imagery of various kinds sells. There are considerably more blockbuster films being released that consistently feature forms of spectacle. These films are centered around their large budgets and big movie star names, attractions of which appeal to the modern day audience and broader commercial interests. However, spectacle's unification with narrative in cinema has become more apparent over the last decade. Its affiliation has not only benefited the audio-visual experience in which the cinematic stories are told, but has enhanced the cinematic experience gained by an audience. Such as from Nolan's films, we as an audience are left wanting more. The movies are made rewatchable, allowing for alternative viewpoints to arise when watching the film for a second time. The idea that prominent narrative dimensions somehow become invisible once the focus turns to the production of a spectacular impact is no longer a consequence that occurs when featured in spectacle-based narrative. It now enhances the narrative dimensions, as the spectacle can often be used to deliver or bring together relative plot points within its story. This ultimately allows the audience to experience a flowing story in which they can be invested. There are no distractions created from the spectacle used, and no monotonous narratives that are needlessly prolonged. The cinematic experience gained is therefore refined and appreciated, as all elements work together to fall into place and produce spectacle-based storytelling.